one test is better than a meeting. And we try to abide by that, by everything we do. If you feel that something could be impactful, just build it and then we'll test it. And if it doesn't work, we'll throw it away. It's okay.
Hi, and welcome to Mission Ops Possible, a podcast for and by operation leaders. I am Guillaume, the head of marketing at Forest Admin. At Forest Admin, our team and our solutions are fully dedicated to operations. So we created a podcast fully dedicated to operations too. In each episode, I invite a different operation leader to speak about their vision, their tips, and their stories in the trenches. And on that front, today's guest is not going to disappoint. In this episode, my guest is Nathanaël Romano, who is the co-founder and CTO at Dift. Dift is a platform to connect businesses and non-profits with new funding sources. Hello, Nathanaël. Thank you very much for joining me today on Mission Ops Possible.
Sure. Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, Nathanaël, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about you before Dift and then how it led you to your role at Dift?
Sure. So basically, I was always a software engineer, often working on projects which I think are very useful to society. So I work a lot in healthcare startups, both in San Francisco and Paris. I worked a bit for Google also on Google Maps. Uh, and then 3 years ago, my soon-to-be co-founders came to find me with this project, which was very exciting, and we just started it.
So what do you do now at Dift?
So today I'm the CTO, and some people would call that CTPO. So basically, I oversee both the tech and product aspects. That means I oversee building, so of our core donation infrastructure, our product itself, and then the integration of our product into our customers' own systems and products.
All right, if you had to sum up Dift's mission, what's your pitch?
So a very high level mission is actually very simple, is to, reinvent and boost generosity, at scale. And towards that mission, we are starting with corporate generosity, where a lot has to be done.
All right. How many people are you at Dift now? How many users or non-profits are you helping?
We're quite a lean team, actually, a very small team. We're about 12 to 15 full-time employees right now. We have worked with about 400 clients. Most of them are enterprise, pretty large companies. I think we've supported around 300 charities total. And to date, we wired about 17 million euros to these charities. That's sort of our main KPIs, which we look at is the total donation amount we've enabled. All of that in, about 2.5 years.
That's a feel-good KPI, I feel, right?
It's a very feel good KPI. We have a dashboard in the office, a very big screen with this KPI in very big. So every day we can just look at it and it feels quite good. Yeah.
That's awesome. And in simple terms, what problems do you solve in the fundraising space?
Basically, we are here to solve an intersection of three problems for three different populations. Firstly, brands, our customers. Some of them are a bit generous, some not so much, mostly for like technological barriers or trust issues. They're constantly looking for new way to interact with their customers and find ways to make this interaction more relational and less transactional. So that's sort of like the first problem. And to add to that, they're usually quite hesitant on their philanthropic strategies. They're often stuck between the fear of not doing and the fear of doing something wrong and being called out for this.
Hmm.
Some people call this the triangle of inaction.
Okay.
And so we notice that a lot in our customers. So that's sort of like the brand side. Then the end customers of our clients, usually they are people who have beliefs, who want to make the world a better place, who want to make their brands accountable for this, but often they don't have a lot of buying power and financial means to help as much as they could. So that's like very basic problem. Everyone wants to help, but like no one has the money for it.
Yeah.
And thirdly, on nonprofit side, they're struggling financially as they had never before. It's very hard time for charities in France, in Europe, and in the world right now. Even more recently, but it was already when we started the company. And Zift is sort of the synthesis of these three problems and trying to like find some way for these three populations to have their problem solved.
Right. And so if we go into more details in the ways you actually help raise funds, like do you have certain
Right.
types of programs or activities?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, our typical customers are brands who are already doing some kind of generous work, usually in a very low tech and low volume manner. And basically, we're providing them with a set of tools, both technological and also a bit on the service side, that allow them to do it at scale. And to be a bit more specific, our products upstream allows them to like source, audit, onboard a large array of charities and nonprofit projects. And downstream, and that's sort of like the core parts, to fund these projects in ways which involve their end customers. And that's the key new thing compared to traditional corporate giving, where we're providing these brands innovative ways to fund these projects, always involving their customers. And today, there are really three main kinds of ways that they can do that. The first one is the historical one, the one we built the company on, which is actually called a Dift. So Dift is actually a contraction of donation and gift.
Nice.
And a Dift very, very simple word. And a gift is basically like a charity gift card. It's a pre-funded donation by the company that, for example, their employee or their end customer can then distribute to the charity of their choice. And that was our very first product. It's a very easy to sell product because you can just go to a company and be like, oh, you offer water bottles or notebooks. How about donations? It's easier for everyone. It's digital. It's easy to send. You can just do it in a few minutes. So that's the first way we enable companies to fund projects. The second one, which is a very big one in volume, is loyalty programs. It's becoming a very big trend in loyalty programs where you earn points that you can burn these points by giving them away to a charity. Accor, which is one of our big customers, was a really pioneer on that. But now more and more and more loyalty programs are adding this brick where you can just donate your points, basically. And so our technology enables that by being integrated to all of the big loyalty program providers. And the third one is adding a solidarity flavor to an existing product. Like you buy something and in return you get a donation. And that's really widespread in some of financial products, for example. So we do that with some banks where you subscribe to a financial product and in return you can donate a little part of your investment to a charity. So those are the three big ways we enable this company to fund nonprofits.
What would you say is your biggest success story?
That's a good question. The one we mention most often is Accor, and mostly because they've been really pioneers on that, and now the program is a very big success. And it was one of our oldest customers. So Accor has a very big loyalty programs called Accor Live Limitless,
Mhm.
which was quite famous because it was written on the PSG
Yeah, the
shirt
soccer
at some
team.
point. Yeah, exactly. And basically, whenever you go to one of a hotel Accor or restaurants, you earn some points, and then you can redeem them on rewards, which are either like free nights or discount on rental cars or upgrades or stuff like that. And they have had for a while a little donation brick, which was very low tech. It was basically a form somewhere where you would say, okay, I want to donate X points. And there was just one charity, which was this charity in South Africa. They started actually using our Dift product. So they were just giving out gifts for employees' birthdays, which was a very standard use case. And one of the employees that got this gift was on the loyalty team and thought maybe we could be a good team to help them on that because it was starting to work well, but they couldn't scale to like more charities. And they wanted to be more integrated in the product, not be just like a form. And so we extended our API and we built with them actually co-built this platform, which is all.diff.com, where you're connected with your all account and you could just donate your points to, I think today they support about like 50 charities total, and it's super international. There's donations in like over 90 countries on this program. I think today there was more than 500,000 euros donated through this program. That's quite a very cool success. And the scale that our tech enabled, going from like just this one single charity in South Africa to over 50 charities which are regionalized. So, they're adapted to the region where you're at, was a very good uplift. They're quite proud of that. They communicate a lot on this program.
It's great learning. So often, I think when you co-build with one of your best customers, the one that are
Absolutely.
really innovative, and you manage to get this scale on the technological side, plus align operations, I think that's always a great story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you have the good people, the good interlocutors. I mean, I think
Mhm.
Accor is a great company for that. They are always trying to innovate, and this was a great learning for us because this program convinced us that the loyalty is a strong use case, And now we see that just all loyalty programs are adapting this and are donating points in some way.
In terms of KPI, so you mentioned the amount of money raised. Are there other things you look at more at the program or the customer level?
Yeah, that's a good question. On There are two kinds of KPIs which we look at. Some of them we can look at them, and some of them, it's more of like the clients to look at them, and we don't have access to it. From our standpoint, we really care about how much money was transacted. That's the first one. How many people, were involved? How many end customers were involved?
Mhm.
We look a lot at just how many customers of our clients basically are going through our platforms and our products. That's a very big KPI. So it's sort of like twofold. And then we have some underlying one more for us to understand how it's going. And basically, we do a lot of analysis on everything that goes on in the platform. Especially, we always leave out some box somewhere for people to provide comments. And we do a lot of analysis on this, like how many people actually left the comments, what's the sentiment, what's the emotion in the comments. And so we look at this KPI a lot. Um, and I think that's mostly it from our standpoint. And then from our customer standpoint, it's really a program by program basis. For
Mm.
example, a loyalty program will usually look at are the members of the programs who donate to a charity more involved in the overall program than the others, which is usually true. Uh, with the Dift product, usually it's more informal because it's just a gift. Companies will just mostly look at out of all the gifts we sent out, how much were actually redeemed. And for the solidarity product part, it's more like a commercial KPI. Is this a strong upsell argument or not?
All right, so let's dive now into how you make this kind of magic happen. Especially in preparation of this podcast, you described that your team is very tech centric and product focused. Can you tell us more about your mindset and how you are organized as a team?
As I said earlier, we're a very lean team overall, organized around the three main functions that are needed. One big function is like tech and products. Then there is a big go-to-market function. And then there is operations and care, which is basically the internal operations and all the relations with our nonprofits and our clients. And the tech and product team is the biggest one. We tried from day one as a company to be very product oriented, very tech oriented, and that stems from multiple things. The first one is that us, the co-founders, we're all like super product oriented, in terms of personalities. I'm technically the CTO, but I love product. I'm very interested in product developments, and I always try to bring these lenses to everything we do. And that's why it's very important to me that tech and product are one single organization in our company. I think that's very key to keeping a product focused mentality in the company. And both the CEO and the president of the company are super passionate about products. The president, Fred, was the founder of BlaBlaCar before that. He's really passionate about product and is helping us having this high quality product philosophy in everything we do. And then in our culture, we try to keep that going by having a very strong bias towards action in everything we do. That's sort of a core to our culture. We often say like one test is better than a meeting. And we try to abide by that by everything we do. If you feel that something could be impactful, just build it and then we'll test it. And if it doesn't work, we'll throw it away. It's okay. And we try to keep that culture very strong. We try to make sure all of the functions are very exposed to the product and to how we plan the product.
Traditionally, fundraising nonprofits is very relationship driven, and you are bringing this startup technology mindset to it. Do you find this has some drawbacks, or on the contrary, does it have a lot of advantages?
That's a good question. The first thing I'd say is that that's also a big opportunity
Mm.
because there are not many tools in that space, and it's easy to have a lot of impact, especially in spaces which are not used to technology bringing so much impact. But of course, you have to do it in a thoughtful manner. We maintain very close relationship to our charities. Like they are not just an asset in our product. We are doing that for them, and our impact team is really focused on maintaining these strong relationships. That's why we don't have that many charities. We have thousands of applications per year to join our program. Today we have like 200 charities actively in the program, and we want to keep that strong relationship. That's very important for us. But that also means even in building the product, we have to be super thoughtful. That's a very interesting and strong challenge for the product team, making sure our UX is simple for people who are not using tech on a daily basis. And they have to go through pretty complex flows. They have to do KYC in our platform to upload a bunch of documents, automate some audits, publish some news regularly, etc.
Mhm.
So they use that. They have their own platform, basically, and they use it quite a lot. And the last thing I can say to that is the difficulty we see is not necessarily being between tech and the nonprofit space. It's more being between the corporate world and the nonprofit space.
Okay.
We are between marketing and nonprofits, which are two spaces that usually don't talk a lot and sometimes don't trust each other. So we have to be the most non-profit of the marketing space and the most marketing of the non-profit
I
space. We
see.
have to be a trusted provider for both of them, and that's really key to our identity, I think.
And in order to get there, like what technology have you implemented? Which tricks did you have to use to bring these people who are not necessarily very technological, as you say, and make them feel in a safe space?
First of all, from a human standpoint and relationship wise, we have a small cohort of charities. Our very first hire was the person who took care of the relationship with the nonprofit space, our head of impact. That was very important to us to, from the first day almost, build these relationships and build this trust. We
Mm.
get invited to talk at a lot of events. We're always there for important events. We try to publish manifests when we can on what we believe in that space. So yeah, the first step is really human. We have this bias to hire people who are sincere in what they want to do here. We are a for-profit business, but our main KPI truly is donation amounts. And everyone we hire has this same mindset, and that sort of like naturally stems to everything else. And then on the more the product standpoint, it's all about UX and wording.
You also gave me some examples when we were preparing for this about how you drive AI in so that you make it easier for people to actually do their KYC.
Basically, the challenge is our product is very complex, right? We are fintech, so we are handling a large amount of money, and for that, we need to make our nonprofits go through a lot of complex processes. And my goal as leading the product is making sure this process can remain powerful while being, or at least seeming, ultra simple. And so, one example of this, indeed, is that the more immersive the experiences we build for our customers, the more fields and information we would have to ask to the nonprofits. 10 years ago, to power our current products, we would have to make these nonprofits go through, I don't know, 100 pages form where they fill a bunch of fields all over the place and then variations of these fields. And we'd probably have a team internally which would look over all of these fields and then change them and enrich them. And okay, this is the plural, the singular. Thanks to AI, we can make this a lot simpler. The direction we are going to is to really ask minimal information to the charities
Mhm.
and then infer all of the rest.
Okay.
And that works for the administrative part. So we're moving towards a vision where they can enter just their name or just their siren number, and then we can fetch all of the required documents and analyze them with AI from public sources. So that's sort of like the administrative side and automate all of the KYC, audit, validation, check for news outlet also to make sure there's not like a reputation risk.
Mhm.
So this is all of the things we're building.
Are there other ways that your teams in ops or tech or product are looking into AI and automation to make the overall business more efficient?
Yeah, actually, we're using AI more and more. The first thing, as any tech team today, and this was the first very impactful application of LLMs, is of course code.
Mm.
Today, a lot of our code is assisted by AI and written by AI and reviewed by AI. If we stay on internal topics, internal ops processes like payment reconciliation, data transformation, or even sharing a prototype is powered by AI today. Very often, when I want to share a new idea for a UX or a new feature in our product, I'll just build out a prototype with an LLM and just share the link, and people can just play with them and give their feedback. So that's very powerful. And then in our product itself, so I mentioned data enrichment. We also do a lot of small basic things like auto naming charity campaigns so that they not all name new campaign, new campaign, new campaign, new campaign. So we've built that on top, just automatically from some context information, give a natural name to the campaign. That was a very small thing.
Yeah, but that's the small things that show you care about the customer.
We do care. And, for a company like us, I think that's what AI should be. Like, we're not gonna change our website to be like AI powered charity funding. The goal is really every time we see a little friction. So this was a good example. We
Mm.
noticed that people would not give name to their campaign. So we just built a little tool that would automatically name it, kind of like Strava, the running app. And the last thing we do a lot with LLM, it's zero shot learning or few shot learning. Interestingly, for LLMs, they enabled some tasks that were already quite well solved for machine learning, like traditional supervising learning tasks. But when you wanted to actually build that in a product, you would have to gather training data,
Yeah.
label this training data, train a model, tune this model, and then actually run this model in your product. And now it's just a prompt. For example, if you want to classify emails as like spam or not spam, you can just plug an LLM model to an API and say, hey, I got this email. Is it spam? And the LLM will give you an answer. And usually it's quite accurate. And that's like what people call zero shot learning. And the next step is like few shot learning is if you give out examples like, hey, you're going to classify some emails and tell me if they're spam or not. Here is a spam, here is a not spam, and it will perform like super well. In our case, we don't classify emails. We do a lot of classification on user-generated content, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
As I said, there is a lot of places in our product where users themselves can generate some content, post a message, add a message to their donations, send a message to the charity, etc. And all of this, we do some classifications on like what's the emotion, what's the sentiment. Emotion classification, sentiment analysis, those has been, solved for like 15 years. But with the LLM prompt, it's just so easy. You just, hey, is that person happy or not happy? And you just give out the comment. And usually LLMs are super, super strong about that.
Yeah, the fact that I would say like they've been universally trained makes them
Yeah,
really
exactly.
flexible
They,
for this kind of tasks. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's still trained, still supervised, but the training is universal, as you say. Yeah.
Do you see other challenges where you're going to apply AI in the next 12 months?
Yeah, part of my job right now is really making sure we take the right trains on this. I do think, as many people, that it is going to transform the way companies operate, and I want to make sure we build our team in a post AI way and not in a pre AI way. So part of my job is to create this culture very strongly in the company where everyone understands very well what can and what cannot be done with AI. So I try to spend as much time as possible either just training people, I give talks internally about this, or just going over their shoulder and looking at what they do and making sure I detect small operational things which can be automated. The rule I give to people to make sure they can detect when something can be automated with the current state of AI is, could you give this task to a very smart 10th grader, which has all of the time in the world?
Mhm.
And usually, if the answer to that question is yes, it's a good fit for an LLM because it doesn't require any strong context knowledge, but still you're going to be efficient at the task.
Yeah, it's the very smart intern, right?
Yeah, very smart intern.
D-
But we do have interns, so I narrowed this down to a to,
10th
to a 10th
grader.
grader. Otherwise, they would tell me I can just give that to the intern.
And do you have no go with AI at the moment? Like things you tell your team don't do this?
Yeah, I think in terms of like writing text, AI is not quite there yet. Maybe there are like super good prompts, super long prompts, which gives you, correct copy. I think the examples I gave with data enrichment earlier was like very constrained cases where this is the field I want, this is very short field, like what you do with €1, this is the variation, etc. But we had a little phase where people would send out reports for meetings that were written with an LLM with not very good prompts, and it's so hard to read. There's so many long sentences and everything. And I like text when the core information is really, really highlighted and not just in bold. And so with writing, I tend to be very careful.
On this case, would you go back to that person and say maybe prompt, make it short, don't use this kind of word?
For this particular use case, my recommendation is still don't write long stuff with AI.
Yeah.
And also, it's so easy to detect. So if you're sending that externally, to someone and they're curious, they'll be able
Yeah.
to check that it was written by LM. Maybe it's not that embarrassing, but that's why I'm a bit shy. So in this particular example, I would say don't try it with AI. In other cases, people would come to me with some guidance. Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, they often write guides about how to prompt. So I try to share that with the team and to be on the lookout for everything that happens. But also on this writing thing, the thing with this LLM evolution and AI evolution is that it goes very fast. So, a year ago, everyone was making fun of images, like, hey, it
Yeah.
has 6 fingers, but now images are crazy. So it's about finding a balance. We
Yeah.
try to make sure we don't use LLM when it's not a good fit, but it's also sometimes smart to invest in what could be an evolution later.
Yeah, a big evolution we see at the moment is what people call sometimes agentic AI or just AI agents. Is something that you've been looking at as well?
Yeah, I'm playing with agents at the time, I'd say. I have two small agents which I'm building progressively. Either the way I build them or the LMs themselves are not there yet for a super strong production deployment, but at least they're there and I'm iterating on them. One of them is what I mentioned actually in the beginning of our talk. I want an agent to be able from just one information about a charity, let's say the identification number, to be able by itself to go fetch all official public sources to get the relevant document, like registration proof,
Mhm.
and not all of the other things, and also go fetch public sources to figure out whether there is a repetition risk. So I'm iterating on the side on that agent, and my goal is to be at that place someday where a charity who wants to onboard on our product just has like one box, give your charity identification number, and then our
Yeah.
agent does all of the rest. It's working okay. I still lack access to some public sources to get all of the documents, but it's working quite well. And the second one I'm building is a tool for tax analysis.
Okay.
It's not always obvious given your donations. Which kind of donation it is. Like there are many different categories. If you're donating food, it's different than if you're donating to a religious group, etc. So there are different cells in the tax form. And so I'm building like a small agent where you can just drop a bunch of tax receipts from the charities and it will just spit out the exact form and all of the numbers you have
Nice.
to put in the various cells.
Right. Makes me think that I didn't ask you about your stack, what tools you use. So we've been speaking about AI, but are there other tools that you've built your operations on?
Before everything, we're a fintech, right? So most of our core infrastructure is built around these transactions. So we use a combination of MongoPay and Stripe. We have this very, very strong internal bias to choose French or European tools whenever we can. So MongoPay was a very good match for that. So a lot of our core infrastructure is essentially financial transactions. The difficulty in our case compared to other fintechs is that we fund these nonprofits in very various ways, from gifts to loyalty programs to adding a solidarity color to a product. And that means basically money comes in from a big company. Most that they care about at this point is an easy single bill and one single wire. And then it goes into our system. And then many things happen. People participate in the loyalty programs, people choose charities, vote, comment, etc. And then money goes out in many different charities. And so all of the internal financial capacities for that is quite complex and relies a lot on those payment service providers. It's quite complex. And it's not necessarily because we're doing this podcast right now, but a big part of our tooling is done with Forest Admin, actually. It was one of the first tool we got, even before the payment service provider. And when you're operating all of these financial transactions and all of these audits, processes and KYCs, etc., just having a straight look into your data and initially edit capacities, and then later being able to quickly deploy these workflows to our ops team, to our customer success team, to our impact team, etc., is super impactful. Because we're operating on like 200 charities, for example, which is like a human scale, we can just have a strong look on where they are in terms of conformity at all time, and that makes us feel super safe.
We have a lot of our customers that I interview on the podcast, and some of them also mention the fact that one, it's great that you have one tool that you can plug every team on, and the second one, that it's great also when teams can get autonomous and they don't rely on tech support to get their dashboards or workspaces to evolve. Is this something you've also seen?
I often say that there was three phases in our first admin usage and adoption. Initially, we just used it like a God mode view on our database,
Mm.
and we were just a team of 4 people, 5 people. I was the only user basically, and I was doing all of the manipulations myself. But at least I had this like God view. And then second phase, we grew a bit the team. We had a couple of first hires, which were super aware of the context of all of the company, and I started building these smart forms for them like, okay, to validate a KYC document or to start a funding campaign, there's always these same actions which I do. And so I package them into one single action and they can just click start and it goes. And the third phase, now that we have a slightly larger team and maybe people don't have context on everything and are more working on their subject, is to be able to build these workspaces. And so me and my co-founder, Clara, which handles all of the operational side, we constantly work on these workspaces. So most of the operational work can be done in them. And now our customer success manager, for example, she has 2 or 3 workspaces and everything happens there. And it's becoming her very powerful tool and very adapted to our use case.
Yeah, it's a go-to tool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think for our customer success and impact team, their main work tool is the Forest Admin workspace at this point.
All right. Looking at the clock, it's been so entertaining that I've not
Right.
seen that we're going almost overboard. Just wanted to ask if you have any final tip for our audience, which is very ops centric.
Sure. From an ops standpoint, that's sort of like very related to what I mentioned and also to our stage. I mean, we're probably more early stage than a lot of people you get on this podcast. I think because now it's so easy to have these tools like Forest Admins and other that give you a very strong view what happens in your product. It's okay to not build everything in your product. I think it's okay. Sometimes engineers like me or people from the tech space have this like uh, people call this the build trap. They have this reflex of like, oh, we need this process to happen regularly. Let's build it. And with tools like Forest Admin or others, it's not necessary. You can just not build it, have someone do the things manually. And when it's too much, you'll be able to build it. And then you can save time, a lot of time to work on the critical value proposition of your product. I think we did some mistakes on that. I wish I had told myself in the early days. You have Forest Admin, you have someone working on ops with you. It's okay. Don't build that. You'll build it when it just takes too much of their time, or you need to hire someone to do that.
Yeah, I think this temptation
Uh,
is always very strong.
Very
I
strong.
once heard that when Eric Schmidt joined Google as CEO, he found the two founders were building an HR solution. He said, like, guys, that's not our core business. So even though the solutions
Yeah,
might be a bit crap, because at the time I think it was 2000, you don't have to build everything. And I think it's changing also today, again, with, as you say, Forest Admin for sure, but also with the fact that AI makes things easier to apply.
yeah, absolutely. In our case, for example, very quickly we built the back office platform for our customers when they can, track everything that's going on in their campaign, personalize their campaigns. And so we built like basically a full SaaS product for them.
Yeah.
Now it's very useful and we couldn't do it manually. But when we built that, we had like 10 customers. And later on, we realized maybe we could just give them a Forest Admin workspace or just do some extracts for them whenever they needed it and just do everything by email and Forest Admin. So that's a regret we had. And on the more the AI part, if I had to give a tip, I think it's what I said earlier. It moves so fast. There is a really sweet spot to find to not jump too quickly on ideas or innovation. Many companies today have like super cool demos and probably super higher revenue in like 1 or 2 months. But then the actual deployment to production, it does not work well enough. If you have like these 5% of cases which are not working well enough, in some industries, that's not good. It cannot work. So I think
Mm.
it's important to not jump on every single possible application of Gen AI. But at the same time, as I said earlier, it moves fast.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's okay to bet. The images one is such a great example. I remember how much people like on LinkedIn and Twitter a year ago,
Oh, yeah, yeah, just 12
under
months
a
ago,
year ago,
yeah. I was like, I have
yeah,
six
well,
fingers. Or
laughing, like, look, yeah, exactly, exactly. And now the images, they're like out of control. I mean, it's very hard to tell. So, making the right bets, I
and the
think,
right timing
is
also.
good. Yeah, absolutely. Often I've noticed that the companies who are becoming very big right now are the ones who made the right bet a little bit in advance. The company I used to work for, which is called Nabla, which is like an AI copilot for doctors. It started a few years before the ChatGPT explosion, but it sort of had this intuition that this would work. And so today, if you see companies exploding, usually they were here, they were just on the right timing.
I think that's a good way to end this, speaking about
So
timing. Thank you very much. I think that was a great episode. I look forward to having you back or have you co-founder Clara as well.
cool. Would love to. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks again and have a nice day.
Yeah, you too. Bye bye.